It's a great honor to be joined by such legends on stage here. So once again, yes, I know we just had some introductions. I'll just say one more time. So we have Prince Filip of Serbia, all the way to my right, the CSO of Jan3, Karthik Iyer, Jayaraman, ambassador for the P2P Foundation, and Marwan Al Zarouni, the CEO of the Dubai Blockchain Center. So I just want to start with the question at hand here, and I'll open this one up to the panel. Why are nation states now looking at Bitcoin? Maybe we'll start right to my right over here, Marwan.
So us as Dubai, we started with Bitcoin actually very early on. Back in 2012, we started teaching people about Bitcoin and what's the value take from it, because we saw a lot of negative connotation with Bitcoin and things like Silk Road and things like that. So we understood what the value of the technology is, and we bet on the technology very early on. We had the first Bitcoin conference in 2013, and also 14 Bitcoin conferences started happening on a regular basis in Dubai. In 2016, we've had a lot of traction for Bitcoin, to the point that we announced a blockchain strategy in Dubai in 2016. So, and the rest is history, so to speak.
Amazing. We'll come back to that. Karthik, you've been around this space for a little bit. 2009, you first got into it a little bit. I'm sure it's kind of almost shocking in a way to see now nation states being interested in this. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what you've seen over the course of your almost now 16 years in Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a 15th year in Bitcoin, and it's 5 cycles. It's been fascinating, right? I've had the bird's eye perspective to look at what was happening in the US back in 2012-13. I was here in Dubai with, I remember meeting Marwan in 2017. He's one of the OGs of the space. Singapore, India, now Bhutan. So I've been around the world. I've sort of had this different perspectives, and the larger countries were always looking for American leadership. They were looking at what US would do. And if the US would come with a regulation, they would start accepting it, right? So when you have conversations with folks at this very high levels in governments, especially with large countries, that was the state of affairs. But after COVID, everything changed. After COVID and after the war with Russia, the world changed. It's not the same anymore. It's not the same world. So now I have conversations. Everybody's excited about Bitcoin. So they want censorship resistance, right? They're looking at this massive debt that's piling up in the US. I mean, I'm very pro-American, just to set the tone right.
Just speaking the truth, that's all.
And I spent quite a bit of my time in the US. So all of these factors have basically compounded, this acceleration towards nation states very seriously looking at putting their surplus capital, their national surpluses, as Bitcoin as a store of value, and now slowly looking at a medium of exchange, which we will talk about later on.
I'm going to come back to that, and I'm also going to put a pin in it. You mentioned Bhutan, and we'll talk about your work there in just a moment. Prince Filip, to you. So your job as the CSO of Jan3 is, I guess, coming up with strategies for how to approach heads of state, people in power, how to talk to them about adopting Bitcoin, the benefits of Bitcoin. Can you tell us a little bit about that strategy and what you're hearing from your end?
Sure. Well, we all know here that Bitcoin is a bottom-up strategy. It's a grassroots effort. But sometimes we've got to employ a little bit of a top-down approach, and that's where Jan3 comes in. We reach out to nation states, to politicians, to leaders, to individuals who might be influenceable, to ministers, and we teach them about Bitcoin. We educate them about Bitcoin, about how Bitcoin can help them, but more importantly, how Bitcoin can help their people. And the way we get to them is because Bitcoin can offer so much, not just a store of value and a medium of exchange, but also its energy capabilities of the way that Bitcoin is not just a monetary update, but it's also an energy update as well. And we're seeing a lot of adoption in the energy space as well. So that's really encouraging to see. So this is where the top-down approach comes in very handy. It also adds to the game theoretic nature of Bitcoin, that it's always good to see some Bitcoiners rubbing shoulders with some presidents and maybe having a picture or two with them, and that gives it some sort of credibility. And then you get other nation states questioning that and then saying, hey, why aren't we speaking to them, or what are we doing about our Bitcoin strategy, what's this and what's that, and it gets people talking. So as you know, Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing arm. It never will, it never has, and we are all the marketing arm of Bitcoin. It's up to us to speak about Bitcoin, about us to spread the word. And most importantly, it's about how Bitcoin can help the individual. So even though we focus a lot of our efforts on these leaders around the world, it's about how it can help their people. And that's number one.
Much appreciated. Mr. Al Zarouni, you talked a little bit about the work, we talked a little bit about the work you did dating all the way back to 2013, doing what Prince Filip just said, speaking with the leaders here in the UAE. Now, we're talking in a post-El Salvador world right now, where it's a lot easier to talk about a nation-state adopting Bitcoin, blockchain technology. I'm sure things were a bit different in 2013, but from what you've told me, you focused on education, you focused on showing the benefits, so I was hoping maybe you could share a little bit about what that process was like over a decade ago.
Yeah, so it was a multi-tier kind of approach. So not only talking to the regulators about regulating the space, which we didn't want to have too much regulations, we want to have much more adoption. And so one of the courses, for example, we used to teach was actually how not to lose your money. So educating people on having offline wallets, having wallets with a seed phrase, having smaller, hardware wallets to keep their money on. We started with Bitcoin, actually. There was no other cryptocurrencies at the time. We were super early. And then when the ICO craze came out and all this other new programmable money kind of smart contract driven economies came out, we taught people how to start their own projects, how to start doing mining, how to start doing proof of stake and what was called master noding as well. And then after that, all the value takes from DeFi and CeFi and all the other, social fi now is a new term. And all the things like micropayments and tokenization and real world assets and things like that. So every kind of new kind of compounding kind of complexity on top of what blockchain is, we try to always not to only keep up, but also provide valuable education that people can act upon. So this has been our ethos from the beginning, and it will continue to be the same.
Appreciate that. Putting education at the center is certainly important, especially when most people are attracted to this just for number go up technology, and we know it's much more than that. Education is a necessary component. Karthik, to you, I actually have two questions. You can start with whatever one you want. Some people may have heard about the nation of Bhutan has been mining Bitcoin. Karthik played a role in this. He's also spoken with higher-ups in the Federal Reserves of India, I think the Bank of China. You've spoken with people. So you've spoken with people who are obviously dealing with money at very, very high levels. You convinced Bhutan to successfully mine. I think they've mined a total of, 13,000 Bitcoin or something at this point. Wow. I would love for you to touch on that a little bit, but I also want to talk a little bit about, please take either one, whichever one you want to go with first. This idea of really continuing to focus on Bitcoin as a currency. Again, not just a store of value, not just something that we hold and never use, but Bitcoin as a currency as well. So please start where you'd like to.
Bhutan actually is a great story, and I told you the main accelerant for Bitcoin going from $18,000 to $100,000 was this massive geopolitical uncertainty and everything else, right? So this was 2019, 2020, COVID happened, Bhutan went into lockdowns. It is the only carbon negative country in the world. It's not carbon neutral, it's carbon negative, right? All their power is produced by hydroelectric dams that India went and set up, and they were producing power for India, and India used to buy the power. And there are only two major contributors to the economy. One was high-value tourism, and the other one was energy. So during COVID, the country was shut down completely. Their zero-COVID policy, so the tourism industry was wiped out. And then India didn't want as much power because India was also going through, the COVID lockdowns and all that. So they went into a huge crisis. So one of my friends recommended me to the RMA, and a lot of folks knew I'm very under the radar, but folks who know me, and then so I was invited to advise the RMA, which is the Fed of Bhutan, the Royal Monetary Authority of Bhutan, and they were looking at how to use the surplus energy that they had. So we gave them initial advice on mining Bitcoins, so because at the end of the day, Bitcoin is a way to store energy for the future, right? It's a battery. That's what it is. It's the most powerful battery in the world, right? So whatever surpluses you have, you can store it in the battery and then spend it in the future. So we gave them this idea, and I think, the Singaporeans reached out to them. Iyer became the mining company that started mining. The sovereign fund invested, became a partner. And the rest is history now. They're the fourth largest Bitcoin holder in the world as a sovereign.
Wow.
They came out of the crisis very well. They're building a new city, which I think Singapore is building, which is called Gelfo Mindfulness City, which is going to create a lot of jobs, and innovation. Okay. So this, in essence, is a remarkable story of how, if you're an unreasonable man, like there's a saying about the unreasonable man, right? Like the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. So all progress is based on unreasonable man. So I think when smaller countries are pushed, then unreasonable men in their leadership roles try and reach out to like unreasonable men like me for advice, and then great things happen, right? And so I've seen the great work Marwan did in the UAE. I mean, transforming UAE, because in 2017 it was still like not very well accepted, and I think there are pioneers like Marwan who came and transformed this place. So I think there are leaders in every country that are doing this. The second thing is the Holy Grail, right? In 2017, 2018, I would basically say things in Singapore, I would get invited, and a lot of those things will happen. Now it's a UAE. In 2022, I basically spoke about the DeFi crisis. I spoke about counterparty risk in UAE in a panel. And then 3 months later, DeFi crashed, and everybody was talking about counterparty risk. So I'm going to be talking about something for the first time now, which is called managing Bitcoin volatility for payments. So we are exploring something called as a GARC model, which is a general adversarial regressive model which is used to price volatility, along with something called as VAR model, which is a value at risk model. The problem is a lot of the guys, a lot of the shopkeepers who start accepting Bitcoins, they're afraid because of the volatility of Bitcoin. Absolutely. If it goes up, they're happy. If it goes down, they're unhappy. So if there is a meaningful way to price that risk and tell them that this is the risk and this is the premium that you need to start charging, then there is, a more acceptable way to do this. So the GARC, ARC, and VAR models will be massively applied, in these payment systems in the future.
Incredible.
Right? And we've been spending 4 years looking into this because a lot of people have massive amounts of Bitcoin and they're not spending it. And this is coming. The next 4 years.
That's amazing. That's amazing also because if you are a merchant accepting it, you have to mark your income to market, and then if it loses value, then you're obviously in a really tough situation. So coming up with something to stop that allows for the frictionless, borderless payments to exist, but without the negative externality of that volatility.
Because at the end of the day, there has to be a meaningful number, right? So if you tell the merchant that he has a 4% volatility risk to accept Bitcoins, then he has a number. He can choose either to accept in dirhams or in Bitcoins, right? Based on market sentiments, based on GARC, ARC, and VAR models,
right,
with the value at risk models. But if there's nothing, it's faith in God, right? So this is going to be a very powerful tool, and you will start seeing a lot of people speak about this for the next 5 years.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that here with us. Thank you very much. We appreciate it, Karthik. I want to talk a little bit about so Prince Filip, you came out early, as a figure that supports this, political figure that supports this, earlier than most, one of the first major ones. It's getting easier, I think, to come out and support this. We just sort of had a bit of a referendum on Bitcoin in the United States in the last election, and we have, I guess, what is considered the first Bitcoin president in the United States right now. When you're speaking with leaders, do they feel like some of the stigma is sort of is it dissolving a little bit, the stigma? Are they feeling a little bit less nervous about coming out to say that they're pro this technology?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for considering me a major political figure.
I mean,
Yes, when I first came out as a Bitcoiner, it was tough. But I got used to it, and I did get some backlash from some of my people back in Serbia, but that's normal because it's a technology that's not understood. And even now, we're all learning about Bitcoin all the time. It is such a beautiful piece of engineering that it's just so much about it that I'm yet to discover. So yeah, it's a tough one to try and convince people what is Bitcoin. And that's the challenge that we're trying to do at Jan 3. So thanks to people like Trump, when he did a 180 on Bitcoin early this year, as we know that in his previous administration, and he's always been very much, I wouldn't say anti-Bitcoin 100%, but he was always very much pro-dollar and never really spoke much about Bitcoin. But I think thanks to his family, and that's great because Bitcoin is family as well, that his family got him onto Bitcoin and made him understand further the use and the power of Bitcoin. I think for many reasons, but I think one of the main reasons is that in America, I think there's about 70 or 80 million Americans there that own Bitcoin or crypto in some form. And that's a huge voter base. And that's a voter base that's hard to sort of to collate because it can be from many different age groups. Of course, the crowds are going to be younger, but from many different ethnicities. It's just hard to quantify those numbers. So you don't want to annoy that voter group. And I believe that's the opportunity he saw there. But also, as rightfully that his children probably taught him, is that America needs to be the leader in this technology. And as he says, he wants to make America great again. He wants America to be the best place for Bitcoin. So he also said before being elected that the right to self-custody, those words, right to self-custody, uttered by a former sitting president and now president-elect, is huge. Let's hope that he comes through with this word when he is sworn in next year. And yes, this has made our conversations easier. It's made a lot of conversations easier because he gives a lot of credibility to Bitcoin. Also, I'd like to add that the adoption of the ETFs in January this year added a lot of credibility into the sales of adoption, and that opened up some new doors and more conversations as well. But really, I think Trump is given because that's a political adoption. I really hope he goes through with what he says and we start to see states adopting it as a strategic store of value or as a medium of exchange, mining it more, being, as Trump says, being the best at it in whatever way or form. And I think this is going to make conversations easier. And I really hope this happens. I believe that MENA has it better than other parts of the world.
Yes.
Coming from Europe, coming from Serbia, we're a little bit more neutral. We're not part of the EU, thankfully. And we are not part of NATO or anything like that, so we're a little bit more independent. Yes, it's tough. We have to put up against a lot of big superpowers out there, but we're holding our ground. But what I'm talking about is the European Union. The European Union, what innovation have we seen from the European Union over the last 20 years, or ever since? And that's nothing, really. Since the 2008 financial crisis, there's been like one or two tech companies that have come through the works. Whereas America and China have got hundreds. They've got many big tech companies just always exploding. The reason why is because the European Union are more focused on red tapes, on regulation, on taxation. Basically, your freedoms, your private property. And Bitcoin is private property rights. So this is something that I hope Europe will wake up to. When America starts to do it, then Europe might start to do it. They will be slow, there will be laggards in it. There won't be first movers. Maybe some smaller states that are out of that control of the European Union might move quicker. But I believe that Trump is definitely going to spur a game theoretic ripple effects across not just the rest of the world, but hopefully in Europe, because it needs it.
Appreciate that. And yeah, we do hope he follows through as well. I could speak as a U.S. citizen saying that. Mr. Al Zarouni, you talked a little bit about how the government itself has adopted Bitcoin and blockchain technology. They use it, and there's another thing I wanted to touch on too. I think it's VARA. It's I have it written down here just so I don't forget. So it's the regulatory agency, the virtual asset regulatory agency. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the government has adopted it and then also how the government regulates it. You said something really interesting. You said we don't really regulate the assets themselves. We regulate the entities that are using and purveying the assets. So if you could touch on that.
So VARA is the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority that actually regulates the activities of the VASPs, which are the Virtual Asset Service Providers, rather than try to regulate the underlying assets. So if you are an exchange, you're licensed as an exchange. If you are a broker or a dealer or a proprietary desk, we regulate that kind of activity. So not try to fall into the trap of trying to regulate asset as a utility or a security, and not try to peg crypto to like the normal traditional financial.
Fitted into the old structure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fresh kind of look at crypto regulation. And apart from that as well, the way that we have a feedback cycle in Dubai and the UAE is that the regulators listen here. We have continuous roundtable discussions on a weekly basis, and I don't know how many of you guys here are based in Dubai as the virtual asset service providers, but we have banking-related, roundtables, retail businesses related, payments roundtables, all of them with the regulators, with the lawyers, with the prosecution, with the courts. We're having one as well soon in January as well, with all the public prosecutors, all the lawyers, all the judges in courts will be invited to speak about crypto regulations and the latest in this field as well, with international experts coming in. So all these kind of roundtable discussions are extremely important to bridge the gap of knowledge between the two, because regulators speak the regulatory kind of language, technologists do the same, but we need to bridge this gap of how to do things and how to regulate and how to push the envelope when it comes to technology adoption and enabling innovation. So these roundtables are essential.
I'm very jealous to hear that after living under Gary Gensler in the United States for 4 years. We didn't have a lot of dialogue happening with our regulators, so it's good to hear that that's going on here. And when we first spoke, I was really amazed to hear that there was that much willingness to learn and to listen. I think those two things are really commendable in the UAE. It's amazing.
And the nice thing about it is that all the meetings, all Chatham House rules, so all the insights are there, no saying who said what. So it's extremely open, extremely open to criticism, extremely open to constructive kind of, feedback. So it's a game changer.
Amazing. I appreciate that. We're getting down to the wire here. We're getting a little close on time, but I had one last question both for you, Karthik, and for Prince Filip. So Karthik, again, we've been talking about Bitcoin a lot as a macroeconomic asset. U.S. is talking about strategic Bitcoin reserves and all this, but you're coming up with this technology to make sure it gets used as a currency, which is what it was intended to be used as. Is it going to take more people like you very much specifying this is not just an asset, it's not just a savings technology? Are we going to have to make a concerted effort to get this across the line? Some of which, using the technology that you're working on, are we going to see this nation? Are we going to need to see this around the world? This sort of effort being made?
No, absolutely. I mean, Bitcoin to me is a representation of the U.S. Constitution on code, right? That's how I see it. It's the greatest constitution in the world, liberty and all that stuff. And so either you need to have great kings like you have in the UAE, outstanding leaders, or you need to have excellent institutions like you have in Singapore with the democracies, or you need to have a constitution like the U.S. You can't go against the constitution, right?
Yeah.
So enforcing the constitution on code is the next step, right? Like privatizing, not privatizing central banks, but opening up to the people. So across history, all the money was either created by kings. British East India Company became the first private enterprise to outsource country running, so it became private enterprises. In 2004, Michel Bowens was the founder of the PTP Foundation, where Satoshi published the first Bitcoin client, wrote a paper called C Theory, where he argued about this time, about 2024. He said, people will come around to technology and organize economic activity. And that's what's happening right now. Yep. And so we have like a plethora of companies now building on Lightning. There's a lot of technology that's coming around for vendor payments, for risk protection. That's what I was talking about today, because you could get paid, but what if Bitcoin goes from 94,000 to 80,000? Yeah. For you and me, it won't matter because we are here for the long term, right? Like 15 years for me, maybe another 20, 30 years. But what about a vendor, who's living day in, day out? And so downside protecting vendors, downside protecting average citizens is going to be the next big game in Bitcoin. And that's coming. And it's going to change the game. Bitcoin's going to reach its true potential, right? It's going to reach what it was meant to do, which has become the money of the people, the global money of the people.
I'm very excited to hear someone like you say that, and I'm on board. Let's go. Prince Filip, last question to you as we wind down here. people are probably interested to maybe, I don't know if you're allowed to share some of who you're talking to or some of the people you're talking to, or maybe, I don't know, some regions of the world that maybe we should keep our eyes on when it comes to the next country or leader that wants to come out in favor of Bitcoin. Is there anything you might be able to offer us on this?
Well, Bitcoin adoption comes in many forms, from just mining to store of value to medium exchange. I think the one people are really interested in would be in the next El Salvador. El Salvador was an outlier. I think we may get a surprise this coming year, hopefully, but we're going to see mining adoption is ever increasing. That is at a nation state level, that's happening all the time. It's happening in secret, it's happening in open. And the next one that's people talking about right now is strategic reserves, so SOV, store of value. That is already happening behind closed doors, or it will start to happen in the open. When it starts to happen in the open, then that's when the old game theoretic ripple effects of it will start to take off. But really, the one I'm more interested in is medium exchange. Really, that's what the white paper said. It's a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That's what we're here for. But we've got to understand that it works more as a store of value today than it does as a medium exchange. Thanks to layer 2 solutions like Liquid and Lightning, that we're able to transact cheaper fees when the high fee environments, or just much faster transactions, and stick to the core thesis of what is Bitcoin. Over time, we'll have better technology that will allow us to transact faster, but always remain true to what is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin main chain is that it's security. It's 15, 16 years of unadulterated truth.
Right.
It is a pillar of truth, that the longest piece of truth we've ever had in humanity, and it's only growing. And that's why the world is waking up to it, and that's why the world is starting to unfold, and the cracks and all the bullshit happening in the planet will all start to unravel thanks to Bitcoin.
I mean, I can't really leave it at any better, perfect way to end it. Thank you very much. Please give a round of applause to this panel here. Absolute legends. Thank you for all the work you've all done over the years.
Is your company ready for the next evolution in financial strategy? Bitcoin for Corporations is your partner in securing the future of your business. With exclusive membership benefits, our comprehensive masterclass, and a network of trusted service providers, we provide the insights and resources to help you incorporate Bitcoin into your financial strategy, ensuring stability and long-term value. Strengthen your business. Innovate with confidence. Bitcoin for Corporations, protecting your treasury and positioning you for the future.